Everyone, we're going to get started shortly. We just ask that everyone goes on mute because we do have over 80 people expected here. So if everyone can go on mute, we will have opportunities for people to come out of mute and share their thoughts, ideas, processes. We want to make the most out of this time. We had over 80 people registered, so we're going to wait about 2 more minutes to get everyone on. And as soon as we get them on, then we will start the show. If you are just logging in now, please make sure that you can hear me. If you can hear me, that means your audio is working. Make sure your video is on because we like to see who's talking. And then in the chat to everyone, so using the little chat box here, make sure that you write your name, your role, the school network that you're with, and one hope that you have for your students. I think most people have already done that, but if you are just joining us, please do that at this time. And in about a minute, we will get ready to go as I see our participants are at 72. So yes, we have many people that are joining us. We're excited. Thank you so much for taking time of your day to join us. And thank you to all the panelists that will be sharing, because honestly, our job was just to convene and to highlight the great work that people are doing during these times. So we can go on to our first slide, which is our introductions of our team. So I have my team here at City Forward Collective, and I'll let them introduce themselves. We will start with the fabulous Ms. Stephanie Manny.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. We're so excited to have you here. My name is Stephanie Manny. I'm the Senior Director of Talent Strategy and Leadership Development here at City Forward Collective. I have been on the job since July when we first launched. Prior to this, I served as the Leadership Development Director at Schools That Can Milwaukee. And prior to that, spent 20 years working in Milwaukee Public Schools. So thank you all for being here today.
Hello, everybody. I'm Melissa Caponegro. I'm the Director of the Quality Schools Initiative here at City Forward Collective. Prior to that, I was a school leadership coach with Schools That Can Milwaukee. And before that, I was born and raised in Chicago, where I was a principal before moving my roots here to Milwaukee, and I'm excited to be here. Please ignore any little bodies you see running behind me. I'm sure my daughter will be making her way in at some point, and so know that we're all flexible in this process. We know you're at home, and so it's okay if your babies, our fur babies, or anyone else is popping in and out. We understand. So thanks all for joining today.
And I'm Jaribel Rodriguez. I'm the Director of Teacher Talent Initiatives at City Forward Collective. And my role is pretty much to figure out how we can build a more inclusive and engaged teacher pipeline with an emphasis on Black and Brown educators. Before that, I was the principal at Lincoln Avenue Elementary and was a bilingual teacher in MPS and like I was a charter school. So I am very happy to host all of you and to see so many of the Lincoln Avenue teachers here. So shout out to all of you.
Jaribel, go ahead and keep going the screen again today.
So with that being said, I just lost track. A little bit about City Forward Collective and who we are. We are a fairly new organization that launched in this past summer. However, it came from Schools That Can that was doing some coaching, and PACE that was doing some fundraising and other activities with voucher and private schools in the city. But with City Forward Collective, our goal is really to support all 3 sectors in the city, all educational members of the community, as well as the students. So our main goal is to ensure that we have high quality school for all of the children in Milwaukee, and to make sure that all families have access to a school that they feel safe, providing great education. One is policy and advocacy, because we know that there's some policies that are impeding the work that is being done in Milwaukee. An example, one that directly impacts many teachers, are things like testing requirements. That is a way that many teachers of color are struggling. So how can we help and remove some of the barriers? The other portion, the second prong that we have, is the representative talent, and that's the work that Stephanie and I do. So how do we ensure that we have the brightest and the best in front of our students, and how do we ensure that students are also being taught by people that look like them, that are from the same community, and that share some of their experiences? The third strategy is community organizing. So how do we get our parents to become more involved and become advocates for their students and really advocate and voice what they want from schools, what they expect from schools in a way that they're going to be heard. And the last one is strategic investments, which is really how do we support schools that are already doing great work, either expand or duplicate. So that is our goal here at City Forward Collective. For today, our new session for today, our goal is really exposure. So we have many, many things, I think, since COVID-19 started and the schools closures occurred. We have been bombarded with things that can be done online. We have been bombarded with programs. And one of the things that we heard 2 weeks ago when we met with teachers was that they really wanted to just hear from teachers that were already doing the work. What were their experiences with the different platforms? Where were they finding success? And as we know, with different age groups, that might mean different platforms. So what our team did is we started reaching out to different networks, different leaders to figure out, hey, what are some things that teachers are doing, some great work to continue educating students during these times? And what platforms have you found to be most successful? So today it's really just to highlight those platforms. We have 5 individuals that will be speaking to the whole group. And then once you go into your breakout rooms, there's another 3 to 4 educators that will also be highlighting practices with different platforms. Unfortunately, we cannot teach you how to use every platform because that would be a 3-hour session for each platform on its own. But what we really want you to think about are what strategies, what platform is being used and how is it accessible to your students. So we have teachers that are using Facebook, Class Dojo, that are using YouTube, and we have people that are using learning platforms that the schools have bought. So there's the whole gamut and everything in between. What will be best for your scenario and what are things that you can take and use? So it's really about exposure. It's really for you to think about your area, your classroom, your students and your parents and what makes the best or the most sense for that situation. With that being said, this is a quick overview of how our day is going to go. So right now we're doing our review, our introductions. And an idea, I'm someone that likes to see ahead. I want to know what's going to happen. So this is a list of all of the panelists that we have. As you can see, they range from early childhood to middle school education and fine arts. We also have all different platforms that are being used, and they will be sharing how they're using those in their classrooms, where they found success, where they found challenges, and hopefully those are things that you can take with you and figure out what will be best for your own case. With that being said, we want to prepare for the breakout rooms. So in order to get you to the right breakout room, it's extremely important that you follow these instructions. What we're asking you to do is to right-click on your name. So when you see yourself, click on your name. And then when you right-click, you'll get a drop-down menu. On that drop-down menu, it will say rename. And we need you to add a number in front of your name. That will determine what group you go into. So if you are a K3, K4, K5, or first grade teacher, please put a 1 in front of your name. If you're a 2nd through 5th grade teacher, please put a 2 in front of your name. And if you're a 6th through 8th grade teacher, please put a 3. This is extremely important as this is how you will be sent into your breakout rooms. So please do that at this time.
So as you are engaging in the session today, I really want to invite everybody to take a minute and think about what your vision is for virtual learning. What is it that you want for the scholars that you are serving in your classroom? What do you want it to look like? What do you want it to feel like? I think this will help you in this space to really be able to look through the lens of what your needs are. While we are engaging in this session today, it's really about having people to share their best practices for you to take away what you can to be in better service to the scholars that you have chosen to serve. So as you think about that vision for virtual learning, what are the 3 components that would make it most successful for you? So what does success look like? When you have those things down, I'm going to ask that you share 1 component in the chat box below. As you think about what you've shared, I know that one of the things that's really important is for all of us to focus on our locus of control. There are so many things that are going on during this time that might be under the control of your school leader, that might be under the control of your network. I think in this space, as we think about how do we engage in kids, how do we engage with families to ensure that the learning process continues, we really need to be focused on where is our locus of control. One of our partners, Education Elements, really ask us to think about, like, where can we influence some things, what things are just completely out of our control, and what things are within our control that will allow us to provide our students with the quality instruction and the quality connections and relationships that they deserve. So keep that in mind as we're going through this process today. You're also going to hear some terms which for me were very new in this new virtual environment: synchronous versus asynchronous learning. Synchronous learning is really this whole idea of learning that occurs at the same time in different places. So think about that in terms of taking an online course that you may take through a university. Asynchronous learning is really learning that occurs at different times and in different places. And so if we go back to some of that idea that we have in terms of a flipped classroom, where kids may be able to engage, but that instructor is not necessarily present. And I think those that are further along on this virtual learning journey have said that in order for our students to be able to have success, that classrooms and schools must have a distance learning plan that incorporates both of these ideas. Also in this space, like, there's going to be new school. Brick and mortar schools, we know that process won't be happening for us again this year. It will be happening again in the fall. So as we think about this space of new school and new learning, from the teaching standpoint, we really need to be focused on this idea of, or these 4 buckets of operations, culture, instruction, and systems. So operations are really thinking about, as a classroom teacher, what does learning time look like for you? What does planning time look like for you? How are you storing all of the information that you're gathering for students? From a cultural standpoint, how are we engaging with the kids? How are we tracking those kids that are not engaging with us in the format? How are we attending to the social emotional needs of our students as well as their families? Thinking through the lens of instruction, what is our instructional floor? What are our expectations for students? What are our expectations for ourselves? What are those virtually friendly tools that we can use? And really, what are those virtual high impact standards? Where we had a scope and sequence of standards that we had hoped to carry out in our schools, we're in a new place. So we really have to start to think about, are we doing maintenance? Are we doing mastery? Or are we doing new meaningful learning? Where are we as teachers on that journey with our students? And ultimately thinking about the systems that we're putting in place in our classrooms and in our schools, and how are these systems engaging parents, and how do they continue to foster relationships? As we engage in this sharing process today, you will hear from some of our presenters how they are working in their domain in each of these learning cycles. And I want to say, no matter where you are, if you're a school or a network that started this work 4 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, at the beginning of the school year, if you're just starting today, wherever you are, it's okay. It's about having a plan for being able to move forward. I am going to now turn it over to Alyssa, who is our first presenter today. I'm going to ask Alyssa just to tell us her school, a little bit about herself, and then share the best practice. Alyssa?
Hi, my name is Alyssa. I am a K-5 teacher at Bruce Guadalupe, or UCC. So it sounds like I'm going to share a couple best practices. So for K-5, we are using Class Dojo. We decided to go with Class Dojo because that was already a platform that we were using with parents, and parents were familiar. We, right before we started all of this, I think we were at like 98% parent connection on there. So we knew it was at least something that we could get to all of the parents. And by the time we started the distance learning, we actually got to 100% connection for parents. So we have all 144 parents connected to our K-5 class dojos, which is awesome. So we use Class Dojo. I know it's a little bit more difficult for the younger ones because they're not as familiar with technology and they don't have laptops. Our second grade and up were sent home with Chromebooks, but K-5 and first, they do not have them. So the best way for us to do it is as K-5 teachers, we post in the morning, we post learning tasks for reading, writing, math, and science. And what we do is when we were planning, the best thing that we thought was to build on what we've used so far in the year. Not necessarily dive into anything that's brand new because especially when it comes to math, there's a lot of new concepts that these parents are not familiar with. So we've been working really hard to try and create learning tasks that we think that our students could mostly do independently. What the parents do have to do, though, obviously, is they're the ones that need to log in. They're the ones that need to share the tasks with the students and tell them what to do. And what we do is we have them take a picture, and the parents submit their picture on Class Dojo, either in a private message or in a portfolio. So we've seen really awesome participation. The parents are familiar with the platform. They're able to message us individually. The teachers that need access to the parents, like our specialists and our guidance and our admin, are all also connected to our K-5 classrooms. So it's really an awesome way for everyone to be connected and for the parents to get all the information that they need.
Thank you, Melissa. One of the things, or Alyssa, one of the things that Yarbal had listed at the beginning was that you could jump in with questions. Given our format today, what I'm going to ask is that if you have questions, that you place those in the chat box below. Please keep in mind that as we go into the breakout groups, that you will have the opportunity to be able to ask more in-depth questions. But in case you're not in the same breakout group with a presenter, if you can list those questions that you have in the chat box, then we will make sure to stop periodically and call those out, but also to ensure that you get a response. Alyssa, I apologize for interrupting. Was there anything else that you wanted to add to what you were saying?
The last thing that when you started talking, I realized I kind of forgot. I didn't know if I should summarize exactly what we're doing, but besides posting those learning tasks, we also we post recorded lessons 4 days a week, because especially with the little ones, we think it's more accessible for them to access the video whenever they can, rather than always having a set time, because we're so, K-5 and first grade, we're so dependent on the parents right now and their schedules. So, and then once a week we do go live though. So once a week, today was actually the day, every week on Wednesdays we go live with our K-5 students too, so.
And I think that's just a great example of mixing that asynchronous with synchronous learning. And I know for some, and I forgot to mention this earlier, that those are new terms. So if you have questions about those terms, please also drop that information in the chat box below. But there is a more detailed explanation as a part of the slide deck that you will receive after this.
I do see in the chat, I mean, and I could scroll, maybe there's more, but Class Dojo is free, actually. It's a free service. It's just a website. What we did, our school has actually used it for the past couple of years. It's super easy, super accessible. There's an app for it that parents can use on their phones. So, and we have quite a few admin. We have a very large school. So each one of our buildings has their own specific admin, and we also have an overarching admin too.
Thank you. Yarbel, you had something you wanted to add. Apologize.
No, that's fine. Alyssa, I wanted to ask you real quick. I think Rebecca had mentioned the portfolio tab with Class Dojo and parents submitting work or pictures back to you. Is that something that you've been able to use or found successful?
Yeah, so it is a bit tricky because the parents need a code. So what we did is we did everything, because it's difficult because I have a teacher view on my Class Dojo and parents have a parent view. So we found the best way to do it is we take screenshots of things when they do have to enter things like codes, and we circle things and we send pictures to them. And so we sent them a code. They have to go into their portfolio, they submit their code. As long as they don't log out, they should be connected to that portfolio forever. So there's an individual portfolio folder we have 6 K-5 classrooms, so I'm K-5A. So they have their own K-5A portfolio, and they also have an overall K-5 portfolio, and that's where they can submit work to from the specialists, like the art teacher's assignments and the library's assignments. So the parents get connected to those portfolios. I had a parent send me a screenshot of her view, so I was able to see it better, and so I was able to answer questions. It's always nice to have a test parent that you can do those things with. And what we did was, so every morning we post our tasks, and you also create a portfolio each day. I just put the date on there, a little summary, and that's where they stick their work. I mean, we still accept their work in private messages because not every parent has been able to connect to the portfolio, which is fine. But the portfolio is an awesome way to organize it by day. So you don't just have a flood of a bunch of different assignments, it's by day, by student.
Awesome. Okay, if you have additional questions for Alyssa, I'm going to ask that you keep those flowing in the chat box. I can see that there are a number of questions, and we will make sure that we're responding to those. So thank you very much, Alyssa.
Yeah, thank you.
And now I'm going to call forward Rachel. Rachel, if you want to share, I'm going to get to your screen in just a second. We keep having freezy moments with mine. So go ahead, and Rachel, if you want to start your share.
Sure. Hi, I'm Rachel. I teach 2nd grade at St. Augustine Prep on the south side. And for elementary school, we've been utilizing a combination of Google Classroom, and then particularly in K4 through 2nd and some 3rd grade, we've also been finding a lot of success with Seesaw. So when we found out we were going to be moving to distance learning, we actually loaded Google Classroom onto all the Chromebooks for kids because they weren't currently using it. 5th grade had done a little bit, but not really. So we had it loaded into their Chromebooks. And then they were sent home with a learning packet that had kind of similar to what Alyssa was saying, like screenshots and pictures, and walked them through with all the codes so that they were able to access that. And that was really our goal. The first 7 days was to get all the kids in and all the kids utilizing the platform. And Google Classroom is great. We still utilize it every day. We post daily slides, so similar to what they get in the classroom. We post their daily slides that have a morning message. We share a chapel song in it. And then they get both a weekly and a daily overview so they can see their work for the week, as well as any live times. So we actually go live with our kids 3 days a week. Monday mornings, we kind of just set the stage for the week, check in after the weekend, answer any questions they have about what's coming for the week or work they have for the week. Wednesday mornings, we go live and do chapel with the kids because they usually get chapel once a week. And then we do some sort of an academic lesson after that with them, just a touch point. Teachers are making it fun. So things like sight word flashcards or some math practice, like Math Mountains based on grade level. And then Fridays, we do kind of like a wrap up, share of the week, like peaks and valleys, that kind of thing. And kind of we make the live time right now way more social emotional based and checking in and the needs of parents and families. As we got more into academics, we realized that while Google Classroom is a great place to house assignments, especially for K-2, it's not super user friendly. It requires a lot of typing. So we started utilizing Seesaw. Love it. It's such a great resource to get to parents and kids. And it was pretty easy to set up. It's just a matter of getting the kids a code that they type in. So we send the link off. We use Remind to communicate with parents and families. So we sent the link off and the class code, and within a day we had 95% of our kids enrolled in Seesaw. So Seesaw, you can take any PDF and make it an interactive worksheet. So things from math books, things from reading workbooks, any sort of a virtual worksheet can be put in. And on a tablet, kids can use their fingers and write on it. So it eliminates the need for typing. And then they can also type, they can voice record, or they can video themselves back. So it's become way more interactive for students and teachers, which has been really nice. So those are kind of the two platforms we're using, and we've kind of narrowed in terms of our focus. For standards, we were doing a lot of like maintenance and reteach, and now we are, the school's calling it like phase 3 moving forward for the rest of the year, identifying 3 to 4 power standards that we feel are the most important for them to have going into next year. And we're really going to focus our instruction in those things, and those standards. So that's what kids will see. So they get reading and math every day. They get phonics 2 days a week and writing 2 days a week. And then we're still giving them enrichment daily. So the kids get art, gym, music. They still get their Bible or godly play and Spanish. So they get all of their enrichment throughout the week, trying to kind of stay with that like whole child and giving them some fun things to do too.
So Melissa, I just saw a couple of questions in the chat box about Seesaw, and I saw that Shabo responded to those. But I wanted to ask you a question in terms of what you mentioned about the standards. How are you guys as a group of K-2 teachers or second grade teachers determining what standards you're addressing like in the moment? Are you moving forward? Are you working on mastery?
So when we first shut down and moved to distance learning, we started kind of in the unit we were currently working in and went back and retaught some of the skills we had done in recent weeks. And during that time, we pulled winter map data and winter or recent assessment data that we had from different units and tried to identify both which of those standards we saw the most potential to show mastery by the end of the year in a digital format, as well as what we thought was most important to have them have a strong foundation in moving into the next grade level. So we worked as grade level teams, we analyzed that data. We're currently also still having weekly grade level meetings with our administrators. So once we did that, then in our Google Meet with our administrator, we talked about what we had identified, why we identified it, and then also kind of looked really honestly at what the reality was of whether it was something that could be taught effectively and meaningfully digitally, because there are, you know, certain standards that are just harder to teach remotely, especially with such young learners who rely so much on the extra help. So that's kind of how we went about that.
And last question for you is around who set up the virtual learning schedule at your school? Was that a teacher-based led decision or an administrative led decision?
Do you mean like the daily schedule or? So it was a little bit of both. We were given some guidelines as to what our expectations were as teachers for what our daily work schedule and hours should be like, as well as what our weekly interactions should be. So we have daily contact with every family. But then in terms of when we do our like live teaching or live interaction with students is up to teacher discretion. So like as a second grade team, we set our Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule. And then different grades were able to work at that, kind of figure that out, what worked for them, what worked for their home setup, and what they were finding worked best for their kids.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Rachel. I want to bring Tracy forward, who's a third grade teacher at Cooper, and talk to us about what virtual learning looks like at Cooper and in her classroom.
Thank you for the invite. Since my classroom has been using Clever apps and Google Classroom all year, it's relatively easy to continue assigning specific activities within those familiar apps with the kids. I try to keep as many of the activities connected with a weekly theme. For example, this week, of course, and I'm sure a lot of you have been doing that, focuses around Earth Day. So within the Clever apps that are available to Milwaukee Public Schools, I've been tapping into Discovery Ed videos. I assign those. There's interactive science labs in there. I also assign brain pop videos and quizzes. Within the A to Z learning, there's 4 different, they call them planets, where it's reading, vocabulary, science, and they recently added a writing planet for the kids. And another app within Clever is Vocabulary that I've been assigning. Then through the Google Classroom, the kids work on their writing with completing various activities and prompts that tie in with those clever apps. I create and I give feedback to all of those, of course, assignments within each of those. Every week I create a weekly PDF of the activities and assignments, and I post those within Dojo. So most of us at Cooper are, of course, have been using Dojo as our communication tool all year. Along with that PDF assignment list weekly, I also have been giving a short video clip that I post on there with the assignments, kind of getting, get the kids interested, motivated to continue to do the work. Previous themes that I've focused on were Amelia Earhart and Helen Keller. Yesterday, I did, I know a lot of you are probably ahead of the game on this, I had my first video chat utilizing the Google Meets feature that has been recently opened up within Google Classroom. So of my 27 kids, I had 11 that were active and participated. So with my first one, I was excited about that. Hopefully the next time will be even more. My special ed resource teacher also was on that chat with us. So it was nice to see the kids' faces and they could see ours. So overall, I thought that went really well. Regarding the culture of the classroom, we at Cooper had some very sad news on Easter morning. That was a Cooper family who had a terrible, fatal house fire, and one of those girls, one of the students was in my class, and we threw it out there that kids could create little posters, we love you, and we're sorry for your loss. And then they took pictures of that and we posted that within the stories of Class Dojo. And I'm telling you, it is just so heartwarming. And the family themselves they've been so appreciative of all of the love and support that was given out there. Also within the Dojo, we have been posting, the kids have been posting science experiments that they're doing at home in portfolio. And as soon as the first one got posted, it just lit a fire, getting other families involved with doing their own. So it's been really fun. It's pretty easy for me. I just kind of planted the seed and they took off with that. So we are, of course, utilizing the portfolio feature too in Dojo. So combination of the clever apps, Class Dojo, and Google Classroom is what we're doing, or I'm doing in third grade at Cooper.
Thank you so much for sharing, Tracy. One of the questions that I see that's asked for you is how is your participation attendance, and then what is participation looking like for the assignment? So you're putting the work out there, you're engaging. What is that looking like?
It's a little frustrating. I would say out of my 27 kids, I have consistently about 10 that are doing most of the work. I think for us from MPS, there's mixed messages where the students were told that it's, these are enrichment activities. But that message was put out before we knew we were completely shut down for the remainder of the year. So I think we as teachers need to have some direction as far as how do we go about this now. And since the Chromebooks were now passed out last week to high schoolers and this week to our K-8 students, we're hoping that we can start holding kids a little more accountable. I've been reaching out to the families that haven't been as active, inquiring, what's going on. I totally understand if they don't have Wi-Fi or issues like that, but I have 100% connected on Dojo, so at least they can get back to me on the phone saying, oh, we picked up the enrichment packets, we're doing paper and pencil and things like that that are not on, on the digital world.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for sharing. We really appreciate all the thought and all of the care that you're taking about how you serve your students during this time. Just a word of encouragement. We've been having a lot of these conversations and talking to a lot of teachers, and most people are at around 50% and then trying to really come up with strategies to shift from 50% to 60% to 70%. So just know, be encouraged by the fact that you're on the journey, and we'll get there. We'll get there. It's new for all of us. Thank you so much. I want to now ask Rachel, who's the 7th grade teacher at Milwaukee Excellence, to share what's happening at Milwaukee Excellence with distance learning, and particularly in her classroom.
Hi, everyone. Actually, it's Danielle. But I wanted to first just say thank you for inviting me to talk, and everyone that is attending this session. So for myself, I'm the 7th grade math teacher, and I think previous panelists have talked about that elementary students often need a lot of support. Well, in middle school, we already had a system of Google Classroom that was being used within our school day. So our students are very familiar with engaging with Google Classroom, and that's the platform we transitioned into. First, when we had our initial thoughts about transitioning into distance learning, right away we were asked to submit all our lessons into an online platform, either if it's Google Classroom or another system. But for majority of us, we decided that Google Classroom was going to be the way, but we also have a online Excel public worksheet. Sorry, you're going to see my little one jump in here because he hears me talking. He might want to jump into the meeting. Essentially, we have an Excel sheet that is open to the public, so that way, even if our students are running out of ideas, they can also go and engage with that content there. So the expectation is that they have these lessons that are posted week by week. They'll have 4 lessons, and at the end of the week, they're required to submit the weekly quizzes, and that's the assignment that we are grading. So it is on their own schedule, so we're not asked to teach in front of students, because we gave that feedback that as teachers, we also have families, and our schedule is kind of harder to kind of balance, like when do we talk to our students, and then when do we also take care of our families and submit all these lesson plans. So that's something that our school had decided. And in addition, we also made sure that our students are also getting support by just posting these videos to supplement the lesson. So we'll be required to submit 2 videos in aid of the lessons for the week, and then that way they can also go back and use that to guide them in their weekly quiz assignments. In terms of planning time, we actually use our time for every other day to submit weekly lessons, including our quizzes, and then we're actually done for the rest of the year, and we're actually moving on to the next school year. So we have all the systems in place for us just in case if this moves on, so that way our students are continuing to learn and support. So thank you to our school leaders for making sure that we are prepared for that. In terms of culturally though, we are also doing wellness calls with our students. Initially, we were asked just to do 5 per day, but it's gone to the point where since we started, since the distance learning, saying that it's very natural for us. By the beginning of Monday, I'll do like 10 to 15 calls to my students, and then even increase that just because I want to know how they are doing and how I can support them in their online learning. I also wanted to say that for families that are struggling with technology, that seems to be like the main issue, just having Chromebooks, or just an issue just for them to navigate through the website and figure out how to use the resources. Oftentimes I tell families, like, this is why we do the wellness call, so I can help and assist you through those things. And then students that don't have any technology today, they are doing Chromebook distribution for our students, but I know that's not going to be helpful for every single student that is struggling with access to technology, but we are trying to figure out solutions. A couple of solutions that I've offered to students that I've checked in with, saying, hey, I'll just screenshot some of the websites that you can't see on your phone. Let me go ahead and share that with you via text messages. And that oftentimes is the way that I can communicate with my students directly. And let's see, I'm trying to think of what else I have to mention. And
Danielle, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What are you guys doing at Milwaukee Excellence in terms of grading structures for students as they're working on these assignments?
Yes, so thank you. For the grading assignments, we are expected just to grade their weekly Friday quizzes and kind of use that as in terms of mastery for the week of lessons. And students will submit via pictures on email or on their phones directly what their scratch paper looks like, so we can kind of see their thinking. But students are really just graded on their weekly assignments. And students that are scoring lower than 20% will go ahead and contact them right away. Like, I'm a person that'll just have my phone ready and just call them and say, hey, I noticed you struggled here. Let's go back and review those things and go back to resubmit that assignment so we can walk you through those things. So they really get that one-to-one personalization if they do need that help. And more often on Fridays, students will be calling me on that Friday just to let me know, hey, I have a question on this. So it's, again, a very natural system since the wellness calls have been started almost about 4 weeks ago, about a month ago. Students will call me.
And just to follow up that Susan had, how are you guys ensuring, or kind of what are your thought processes around if it's the student's own work or not on these quizzes?
Yeah, so that's where the system of the scratch paper is also supplemented. So they have to submit some sort of photo or email showing this is the work that I had produced in order to show that mastery. So I'll get emails on Friday or text messages with photos of what the student was working on. So I also can tell by their own handwriting, so I can see the legibility of like, okay, they did show the math problem correctly. I know where they struggled with. So I kind of see both sides of that evidence.
So as we're doing that, I want to have everybody take another minute just to think about when you initially framed what you wanted virtual learning to look like for your students, what resonated with you as you heard our presenters speaking. So I want you to drop one of those ideas into the chat box. And then we are going to be working to push everybody into the breakout rooms. Remember, as we go into these breakout rooms, that you will have the opportunity to hear from other educators around the city to, again, gather ideas and then ask those questions in a smaller domain. I do want to, again, before the end and now, acknowledge all of our presenters that have shared so far and really thank them for putting that out there to help us all get better together. So thank you all for engaging in those breakout sessions. We're just going to take a moment now, and I'm going to ask one person from each of the session to just share some highlight, one or two from their discussion, as well as one lingering question that you may have. I'm also going to encourage the rest of us in the group to share your highlights or questions that you have in the chat box. So I want to start with the K4 through first grade group, second grade group. I think that was Jaribel's group.
It was my group. We did not get to that part, but I'm going to nominate Ms. Minger. Can you synthesize?
I love cold calling.
Too. Okay, so we kind of talked about different things that we could do, and the big two that we kind of talked about were Class Dojo and Seesaw. So we kind of did like a comparison between the two. We also did talk about Google Classroom, how it's a little bit harder. It's nice that a lot of schools are doing it and the older kids know how to do it so they can help the younger kids, but at the same time it's a little bit tricky, just trickier for younger kids. So we kind of just talked about a lot of the comparisons of Class Dojo. It sounds like is a really good communication device, but it's not always as user friendly. Where Seesaw seems to be like they can do it right there. Anyone else want to add? I think that was kind of the main.
If that's all right, I'd like to add in.
Yeah, go right ahead, Mike.
Great. So some of the highlights were the different kind of apps we talked about. Screencastify was interesting because everybody in our school uses Chromebooks. That's a great way for editing video. One of our early challenges was creating read-alouds for kids. And if you posted straight onto Class Dojo, it would mirror it and all the letters would be backwards, which is a big challenge for preschool. So being able to find better video editing tools that you can use on hardware is great. A lingering question that I had was how people are tackling assessment and sort of on the larger end, how that's going to flow into their own school's report cards.
Stephanie, you're on
Sorry,
mute.
I forgot I muted myself. And Mike, please make sure that you're putting that question in the box below. We want to make sure as we're planning to continue to engage with educators around the city that we are hoping together we can tackle some of those questions. Is there someone from the 3rd through 5th grade group that would be interested in sharing? That's Shaba's group.
I'll start and I'll let any other group members pitch in if they'd like to share ideas. I know we talked about similar platforms. We discussed utilizing Class Dojo. It seems to be like a common platform most of us use, Google Classroom. And I liked that we all talked about sort of balancing the workload, going back and forth between ELA and math, making sure to not do all of it all together. We talked about doing A weeks and B weeks to make sure to better manage that content. And I know we sort of ended our discussion with frustrations about, you know, making sure everyone has internet access and there's equitable access to those, and trying to sort of figure out across our schools and districts and more on a state or national level, how do we ensure that everyone has internet access? Because that is the biggest barrier right now to all of this distance learning. Does anyone else in group 2 want to pitch in anything else I missed?
All right, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Andrea.
Nope, I just publicly went off in my group about how I'm just outraged that kids don't have the technology or the internet, because I know far more of my class would be doing the work than what I'm getting. And I'm posting assignments every day and have been since the first Monday. And it's the same kids that are doing it, and it's because nobody has internet for technology.
Andrea, thank you for sharing that. And I thank also Shaba's group for raising that issue. And I do want to highlight that I know the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, along with our organization, is beginning to work with networks, beginning to work with MPS on trying to pass out grants and do some other things that are going to help families have access to some of the technology. I know that for a while they were offering free hotspots and there were some issues with those. So I know that we as a city and as a community know we have to do some things differently, and around the country, people are doing things differently, such as using buses for hotspots. And so I know that as we move forward in this time that we are going to be able to engage and to make some plans. So be hopeful that others are aware that those problems are happening, and we're trying to work as a collective to figure out how do we address those on behalf of kids. Can't make a guarantee about when it's going to happen, but it's on the radar. So trying to do some work around that. But I appreciate you guys highlighting that within your group. I'm going to call on David to share what we talked about in our middle school breakout group. David?
Hey, so in the middle school one, Catherine focused on a couple of things from her school that were really effective. One was staggering their classes between days, because a lot of parents have given feedback of being overloaded if kids are getting 7 or 8 assignments a day, because developmentally that might not be appropriate to expect 8 hours. And then they had set office hours where kids knew if they needed an immediate response that they could get it, which I think was really effective too. Tammy mentioned a lot of really, really great resources that I'm hoping she shares somewhere. I'm not going to go through all of them, but kind of across content areas that are accessible or free right now. And then Tony brought up some really good points just regarding like how IEPs are going to work. And then, excuse me, and then being aware of those even as regular ed teachers. And then 2 questions I had following that was just how we follow up, like what role administrators and teachers play as far as following up with families that aren't completing work. Obviously parents don't need 3 phone calls, but also if it always ends up on the teachers, that can become a lot. And then the second one that I was wondering is how different types of assessments are fitting in. Obviously we want maybe like a more rigorous writing one. But that may be more difficult for people based off the accessibility for students. So I'm just curious if there are certain types of assessments that are working better for others.
All right, was there anyone else from group 3 that wanted to share or had a question that they wanted to pose? I'm practicing my wait time again. Thank you so much for sharing, David. I do want to highlight for you in terms of how people are staying connected and with families and trying to engage. with students that are not engaged, that there are a number of networks and schools that have some strategies in place, and we'll be highlighting those in one of the upcoming sessions, and maybe we can send some resources out to you in response to that question as a follow-up to this session today. As we kind of draw to a close, we're not over, so don't leave, there's still more to come. I just want to highlight some best practices for virtual learning. One of the things we kept hearing from all the presenters today, and I think we're hearing nationally, is really for us as classroom teachers to be flexible. Be flexible about the lesson, be flexible about the content, how you deliver it, when you deliver it. Use different sorts of mediums for reaching out to students. I know we're all engaging in this Zoom and Google Meets, but you know, some time ago we used to text people and call them on the phone. And so that's really a way to continue to engage with our families and engage with our students. Consider the needs of your students and your family. As Andrea was mentioning, while we may want to make some assumptions that people are choosing not to engage, sometimes people don't have the resources right now to be able to engage. So as we think about how we are providing access to learning, consider what our family needs are and what our students' needs are. Plan to maximize engagement. One of the most important things that we keep hearing from those that are far along on this journey is those routines and what those routines are, and keeping them consistent for our kids and for our families, and being responsive to that feedback. Make a plan. I know that at Seton, they're going with the blended learning model, and I heard Tony from AugPrep also talking about that, having packets, having things for those students that don't yet have access to technology. One of the most important things I think also is to remember to communicate. As a parent myself, I feel like a lot of communication has happened with my children that hasn't happened with me. And so it puts me in a challenging space to be able to hold them accountable and engage in the process. So make sure that you're communicating with students, communicating with parents, and communicating with your colleagues from around the city. Like, you're not on this journey together. If somebody's 2 steps behind or 2 steps ahead, communicate with them, reach out, grow that network. Really decide what your measures of success are. I think as teachers, we're always clamoring for more autonomy, for more freedom. Well, guess what? Things are new. You got it. Take a hold of it and do your best on behalf of kids. Most importantly, I think I want to remind everybody is to give yourself grace, give your students grace. This is new. We're going to figure it out. And in this moment, we're going to do the best that we can. I'm going to turn it over to Jody Bell.
All right, like Stephanie said, giving ourselves grace is extremely important. And as I'm looking at the chat box, I'm seeing some really important questions come up, and like help with brainstorming with how do we deal with packets, people that we need to provide paper and pencil materials, but how do we get it back? How do we grade? Is it safe to get it back? We don't have all the answers right now. Our goal for today was really to expose that there's a lot of things happening around the city. It goes all over, as you can see. We had many educators sharing what they have done. What we want to learn from you is, based on today, based on what you have seen, we want you to complete the survey that Melissa's putting in the link right now. So if you can complete that survey, the last question is, what is your session? What do you like to see? What would help you in the future? Because we do have 2 more sessions planned for teachers, but we want it to be driven based on your needs. Today was really just about exposure and sharing all the different things that are happening. Now that I know that you have more questions, we want to really target those specific needs. Once you've completed the survey, please type done in the box to let us know that the survey is complete, and complete the following statement. Based on what I have learned today, I will blank. So complete that statement and put those responses in your chat box. So we will give you some time to complete that survey now.
As you're working on the survey, I just want to highlight that on this next screen, you'll find all of our contact information that will also be sent with you in follow-up email that will include this PowerPoint. I'm seeing that a number of people are chatting that they can't log in to the survey. So we're going to take a second and figure that out why we can't get in today.
Yep, working on it right now. Give me a second. I will see what's going on.
Thank you. So as Melissa is working on that survey, which I think may have moved our screen, I just want to remind everybody that in this space, one of the things we really need to be focusing on is how we are making those connections, continuing to build those relationships with our scholars and with our family. I know a lot of people have many questions about grading. There are some people that are ahead on that journey than other people's are, but remember to give grace before we get into grades. Practice patience with yourself and with everybody else, and that we're gonna get there. So, but thank you all so much for being here today. If no one has told you this week or today, thank you for all the work that you're doing on behalf of scholars. Like, let us do that. Thank you for the work. It is needed and most appreciated.